Better Buildings for Humans is powered by Advanced Glazings, makers of the Solera line of products. Solera is the leading glass glazing made specifically for architectural daylighting and with extreme insulation performance. Learn more at advancedglazings.com. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Better Buildings for Humans. I'm your host, Joe Menchefski, and this is the podcast where we explore the impact that the built environment has on our health, our wellness, our productivity, and our general joy of being alive. And we talk about sustainable design here as well. And today, this week, we are going somewhere I have never gone before, and I'm guessing it's a place that a lot of our guests, our listeners, have not gone to before. So this is going to be really exciting today. We are going to talk about home safety, and particularly we're going to talk about safe rooms. And I want to introduce you to Steve Humble, and I want to welcome Steve to the show. Steve, it's a real pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
You bet, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's really cool. I love going to some places that we haven't gone before, and this is going to be a good one. So let's start by learning a little bit about you. Tell us about your background, Steve, and how you came to create your company, Creative Home Engineering.
Yeah, sure. So I am a mechanical engineer by education. And when I was going through school and before, I always thought I would work on airplanes and cars. And I actually did that. I worked for Boeing. And after 9/11 happened, Boeing wasn't hiring any more employees. And so I had to go find different work. And so I worked in the home automation industry. And then I went and worked in robotics. And I developed between those three employments, I developed a series of skills. And then I just had this idea. I've always been a big fan of the movies, and especially my favorite genre of movie is spy movies. And so I always saw these movies that have cool secret passageways in them. And I was at a point in my life where I was still a bachelor, but I was renting this great big house with a bunch of friends of mine. And I just thought, man, it would be so cool to have a secret passageway in this house, just like the ones that I've seen in the movies. And that's when the gears kind of started turning, because I thought, well, I'm not a wealthy person at this point in my life, but there are a lot of people who have seen the same movies that I've seen, and they have the same fascination probably that I have. And so I just thought there's got to be a business out there that could cater to them. And so I went onto the internet, and there were no companies at this time. This was like 2003. There were no companies anywhere in the world that were making secret passageways for houses. If you wanted one, you could maybe go to a cabinet shop and they would kind of put a bookcase on a gate hinge and it would like kind of work, but nothing sophisticated like what I had seen in the movies, where the fireplace rotates around when you scan your fingerprint, stuff like that. And I thought, because I had just been doing robotics and home automation stuff, I thought I could totally make this for people. And so there's a lot of research that went into deciding whether or not to do this, but eventually I took the plunge. I quit my job. I moved back in with my parents. I was a very fresh-faced 23-year-old at the time. And I put out a shingle that I was making secret passageways for people. And it did not take very long before all that pent-up demand in the market was, knocking down my door to get a secret passageway for their house, just like what they had seen in the movies.
So is it as much for fun as it is for security?
No, in the early days, it probably was, just because I don't know if the really high security people saw me as a serious person. I was 23, not very experienced. And usually these kind of high net worth people that experience real death threats and, things like that, they're going to go with a more reputable company. So in the earliest days, there was a security element to it always. But I think the majority of my customers in the first couple of years were more about hiding that secret game room or kids' playroom or, things like that. But as my reputation continued to increase over the years, and I've been doing this now for 21 years, and as it continued to increase, the nature of my clientele got more and more security oriented. And so now we've got about 5,000, maybe more secret doors out in the field. And
Wow.
we've done just about every kind of secret door that you can think of. And probably 70% of my clients come to me for a security type purpose.
Right on. Well, let's talk about security a little bit. Let's go big picture first, Steve, just to set the grounds for this. What are the key aspects of home security?
Well, my school of thought on this is maybe different from what some other people might tell you. So, a lot of people feel like the key to home security is forced entry protection. That is heavy steel everywhere. And that is an important aspect. But what people don't understand is that even a mediocre burglar can break into the best safe in the world in just a few minutes. And people are startled to learn that. But you can just go onto YouTube and type in a search for how to break into a safe or how to break into a vault. And it's not hard. And the internet will teach you exactly how to do it. And it happens every day in this country, all over the world. People are constantly breaking into the houses. They see the safe there. They specifically went when the homeowner's not home, and they brought a couple of simple tools with them that you can get at the Home Depot for $50, and they break into the safe. And so we believe strongly that having camouflage is even more critical than forced entry. Forced entry is also important, but if you get a safe and you put it in the middle of your, garage or someplace in your house, you might as well also get a neon sign to put above the safe that says, "This is where I keep all my valuable things." And when somebody comes in, they're going to see the safe. They're going to absolutely devote their attention to it. And if you're not home, they're going to be in that safe in 5 minutes, maybe less if you get a cheaper safe. But they're really not as secure as people think. And so camouflage is, in our view, perhaps the most important aspect of home security. And that goes for if you're storing valuables inside of a safe or if you want a front door that resists attack. This is a little bit of a tangent, but we build vault doors of all kinds. A lot of people, they want a vault door and they just don't want it to look like a vault door. So we build vault doors that look like all the other doors in their house, recessed panel, wood cladding. And we do that for front doors as well. And it is funny how in other countries, people just take it for granted that, of course, your front door is going to be a hardened door because it's exposed to the street. And here in America, it's like the only place in the world practically where you can have a multi-million-dollar house with a front door that anyone can just kick in because it just has a single deadbolt. So, forced entry is also a really key part of it.
Right. Okay. Well, let's talk about your customer. Like, what does your typical customer look like, Steve? Is it the ultra rich, the very famous, or, just your average citizen?
Yeah. So for the first maybe 10 years that I was doing this, we really catered to the ultra rich. So
Mhm.
it wasn't that I wanted to only serve the ultra rich. It's just that we decided early on that we only wanted to make the very best secret passageways. We wanted to make secret passageways just like the ones in the movies. They had to be able to fool anyone who walked in. They needed to be sophisticated. Usually they're motorized. That is a very difficult thing to do as an engineer. These are much more sophisticated machines than people understand, I think. And when we build one of those, it's like we're developing a prototype and it has to work. So we have to do, second revisions and third revisions. It's very expensive to develop a product. And that's what we're doing really for every single customer. So our cost to produce these things in the early years was very expensive. And so our typical clientele was, you know, a lot of celebrities, heads of state. We did a few for royal palaces, pro athletes, and a lot of business people. And really, that was probably the biggest section of the clientele is people that own their own business. A lot of them got death threats because of the line of work that they were in, or maybe they were just building their dream house and they have multiple homes and they're away from the house for a long time. They want to make sure their wife and kids are safe, or they want to make sure that the cleaning lady doesn't steal their jewelry collection while they're in Barbados for the weekend or whatever. So that was the majority of the clientele. But during that entire time, I was having to tell a lot of people, no, I'm sorry, we just can't build something in your budget. And so about maybe 10 years ago, we launched a new division called the Hidden Door Store, which has its own separate website, which is hiddendoorstore.com. And the purpose of that was to sort of democratize secret doors to make them more accessible to anyone. And so the way we did that, we had a lot of experience at that point, and we developed a few standard products. And by making them standardized, there's so much less development expenses that are incurred. And also, we set up kind of an e-commerce website so people could just go online, select the options that they like, and place their order. And then, so by doing that, we also eliminated the costs associated with customer service, at least reduced them dramatically. And so now we have these two divisions. So if you're a middle class person, you're trying to do this on a budget, we have secret doors available at the Hidden Door Store for anybody. Those start at $1,000 and go up to usually maybe $5,000 towards the top end of what you would pay there. And then if you don't find something there that meets your requirements, or if you need something special, like you need it to be motorized or bulletproof or whatnot, then you would reach out to our core business, which was creative home engineering.
You built that metal building for a reason, to house what you love, your classic car, your boat, your projects. Shouldn't it be a place where you actually want to spend time? Solera turns any shutter garage into a comfortable, private, light-filled retreat. Bright by day, glowing by night. A space that works as hard as you do. Visit advancedglazings.com to get started.
Right on. So you mentioned earlier that it's really difficult, right? So we're talking about the custom models as opposed to the, the limited range of off-the-shelf options. Let's talk about customization for a minute. Just tell me about the complexity. Why does it get so complicated to do these designs?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's such a great question. And I'll try to be concise with my answer here because I could talk all day.
You don't
on
have
this.
to be.
So I get invited. Yeah. I get invited to work on houses that are like $50 million houses, $100 million houses sometimes. And money is not
Wow.
an object. And yet I will go in and I will see a secret passageway that was built by the local carpenter, let's say, and they might be an incredible woodworker, but they lack the engineering expertise. And this bookcase will sag and it will carve an arc in the floor as it opens, which gives away the secret. Like you're standing on the public side and you can see this
Right.
arc. Or the door closes and it closes at the bottom before it closes at the top. And so it doesn't look quite secret and you've got light leakage coming through. These are
Yeah.
problems that have plagued secret doors for centuries. And so to combat that, you really need engineering involved. And a lot of times, this is what always happens. Like, honestly, it's a sad story because I field phone calls almost every day from somebody who has fallen into this predicament. They go to the carpenter and they say, hey, I want a secret door. Can you do this? And the carpenter, his ego is kind of rolled into this, and it's not a good look for him to be telling his customers, no, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do that. I'm not good enough. He's never going to want to say that. And so he says yes, and he builds this thing, and then oftentimes he will call me up after he's built something that isn't going to live up to the customer's expectations. Or sometimes the customer will call me and say, hey, I spent a bunch of money on this thing, and can you come in and fix it? And the answer is almost always, I'm sorry, it needs to be purpose built. And in the case of the carpenter, what he will do at that point is he will get a non-marking caster wheel and put it on the underside of the secret door that he's built in hopes that'll keep it from sagging. And all that does is now the caster wheel leaves a mark. Even though it says non-marking, they're always marking. And it won't lock right. It'll have too much friction. It won't feel good. And so in order to combat that, we have developed a ton of stuff over the years. So I got a patent for a hinge that we developed specifically for secret passageways. And what makes our hinge kind of special is that it has what's called 5-axis adjustability. So what happens with houses is they're not perfect. They don't stay put, like they're built out of wood usually, or even if they're not, they're built on foundations that have a tendency to settle. And as the years go by, as temperature changes, humidity changes, the house is always moving a little bit. And you might have noticed even on a regular house how if it's an older house, especially, you might have a door that's kind of sticky or the latch doesn't engage properly. Well, that is acceptable with a door that you know is a door. But if it is a secret passageway door and it doesn't look right, like if the latch is sticky, it's totally unacceptable. So, especially with the secret door, because you start seeing it, it loses in its entire purpose for existing if it's obvious that it's a door, right? And so we have this
Yeah.
hinge that allows you to come in after 5 years or 10 years and say, oh, well, look at that. The foundation is settled and the seasons have changed. And so the top right corner needs to come forward by a 16th of an inch and it needs to go up by an eighth of an inch. And rather than having to scrap the entire project or call the original contractor in to come do an expensive modification, you can just insert a little wrench into a little hole and you turn it and you could just watch. Sorry, you can't see my hands. You could just watch it, move in the directions that you're telling it to move. So you can always have this really smooth operating, silent, near frictionless secret door that always locks great and looks fantastic.
All right, so let's talk about, there's two things I want to talk about. I want to talk about how you operate the door, and I want to talk about what happens behind the door. But let's start with the operation first. I think of the spy movies, and I'm a big fan of spy movies too. You grab the book and you pull the book out and the door opens, or there's a little decorative element that you turn the decorative element of the door. Do you include, is that typical to have those kinds of sort of locking, opening mechanisms in order to access whatever's behind the door? Or
Yeah,
activate the door?
absolutely. It is totally typical.
Okay.
And in fact, almost every single customer, and that's really kind of the funnest part of this job, by the way, is the access control, the switches. They are so fun. And if the client has a particular interest or hobby, they tell us about that. And we can make a secret switch that is special to them.
Right.
And you can mix and match switches. You can have a switch for every day of the week if you want. So, for example, yes, the book switch is very popular because that's what's in the movies. We
Yep.
often make the book switches wireless so that they can go on any shelf and you can even take them into the secret room if you like. We let the
Okay.
clients choose their favorite title. So you tell us what your favorite book is. We can make it so that you tilt the book, or we can make it so that you open the book and inside the book there's a keypad where you enter your code and that causes the secret door to open. I
Okay.
have several secret doors in my own home, naturally. And one of them is one where you play a sequence of notes on my piano. And if you get the notes correct, the secret door will open. And it happens to be the James Bond intro to the soundtrack. I have one where you spin a globe and that causes the secret door to open. I have a mounted stag where you can reach up and pull on part of the deer and it will cause the secret door to open that way. I have a book switch in my house and we do all the time for other clients. If you've ever seen it in a movie, I guarantee we have made a secret switch like that for a client before.
Oh, that's really cool. I love this. Have you ever had a customer say, I want this as my secret switch, and you've had to go back and say, well, that's pretty damn obvious. That particular design will make it way too obvious that's a switch. Have you ever had that conversation?
Yeah, well, so similar conversations to that happen when the client has a high security application, but yet they want a really fun kind of secret switch, like a book switch is maybe really, really common, where if somebody were to ransack the house, they might pull that book off the shelf and cause it to accidentally open. But that's really not such a big concern because you can have more than one access control device. So in those situations, usually what we'll do is we'll have a 2-position switch inside the secret room that toggles the door between high security mode and low security mode. And in low
Oh,
security
okay.
mode, their book switch might work, for example, but in high security mode, only their fingerprint scanner will work. So you can kind of have the best of both worlds. These systems are totally unique and custom. And so they are developed around your needs and your requirements, including the electronics aspect. Well, I'll give you another example. Sometimes the client is really interested in protecting family members. So we call that a panic room. It's a place for people to go
Yep.
as opposed to storing valuables inside the secret room. And you wouldn't think it, but there's really dramatically different access control configuration that's going to be appropriate for those two applications, even though they're both high security applications. If somebody has broken into your house, you have seconds to get away, right? You do not want to
Yep.
be fiddling around with a keypad. You just want to be able to get in there. And so usually if it's a panic room, there's no lock on the exterior at all. You just run up to the door, you push it open and you go in. And then when you're on the inside, there's a big vault style spindle locking mechanism
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
only you can control it on the interior. And it's kind of the opposite if it's a place to store valuables, where you might also have a redundant locking system on the interior, but you're really more concerned about the exterior. That's when you want that fingerprint scanner or that keypad.
Right. All right. Well, let's talk about the panic room a little bit. So what happens in, like, what else is in the panic room, and how much of it, like, is it something that you provide?
Yeah, so there are a few other aspects to a panic room that are really important that we can help with. So the primary one, of course, is the door, and that is what we make more than anything else. We make doors
Right.
that don't look like doors or extreme high security doors. Sometimes by the way, we will make doors that, oh, I already mentioned they will look like all the other doors in their house. So they're not really a secret door, but they are like a discrete vault door. And then sometimes we'll even make vault doors that look like vault doors just because there's nobody else anywhere that makes what the client needs. Like we have built several that were UL level 10 bulletproof. So that means
Okay.
that they can stop rounds from a 50 caliber rifle, which is more military kind of rifle that a lot of people don't have. And so there's
Right.
not the companies that mass produce vault doors aren't making vault doors that can withstand that kind of an attack. Or I'm doing one right now for a client who the vault door is glass because it's just kind of fancy and he wants the secret room to be secure, but he also wants you to be able to see in. So it's this big bulletproof glass thing and you can see all the
Yeah.
interior bolt work. And that's what the client wanted. It's a very unique project, but also a really exciting project. So we do a lot of interesting stuff that nobody else can tackle. Oh, also, if like the client wants a drawbridge or they want their pool table to come up out of their floor or they want a door that goes like straight up, they're not finding anybody else that does this kind of stuff. This is all like all roads lead to Rome. We're really the only people that I'm aware of that make stuff like that. But back to your original question of what do we provide for panic rooms specifically, aside from the door, the walls themselves usually need to be reinforced. It doesn't do you a lot of good to have a bulletproof hardened door if the walls are 2x4 and drywall and you can just kind of punch through them. So
Right.
we provide bulletproof armor paneling that goes around the perimeter of the rest of the room.
Yeah.
And that's a whole subject in and of itself. There's a lot of different ways to armor panel rooms. A lot of people will use fiberglass, and that will be great at stopping bullets, but not great at stopping other kinds of attacks. And then several other solutions that maybe we don't need to go too deep into right now unless you really want to. But we tend to recommend that we use AR-500 ballistic armor plate steel. It's an alloy of steel. It's like what they make tanks out of.
Yeah.
And
How
we have a
thick?
system where
How thick
we
is it,
laser
Steve?
cut these.
How
Sorry?
thick is that steel? How thick are the steel plates? I just need
Yeah.
to know.
So that depends on what types of attacks they're looking to
Of
resist.
course. Yeah.
But usually the panels vary between 3/16 and 5/16 inch thick. But these panels, that you cannot cut them on site because they're super hard. They're like impossible to drill. And
Yeah.
so we have a laser that cuts out all these panels to specific sizes. And then we have a system of attaching them to the wall that has sections where they overlap so that you don't have weaknesses, especially where you would have outlets and plumbing fixtures and things like that, you have to have a system of overlapping panels so that you don't have chinks in your armor, literally. And so we provide that armor paneling and the design and development so that we can make that all fit and install easily into the house. There are some other things that a lot of people want in their panic rooms. So that includes like communication and air filtration systems and things like that. And we typically try to stay in our lane and not do things that are not our core competency. But because we are in this industry, we work on the same projects with the same experts that are top of their field. And so
Right.
if clients are doing a panic room, I can usually point them in the direction of somebody that is going to be able to help them.
The comms are interesting, the communication side of it, because I mean, if you've got all those metal panels on the side, it's almost like you've created a Faraday cage in that panic room. Is that the case? Like without special communications equipment, would you have difficulty, on your cell phone in a room that's metal panel surrounded?
Yeah, you absolutely could. And in fact, a lot of our clients are interested in that feature because it offers a Faraday cage, because they're also concerned about an EMP attack, which stands for
Oh,
electromagnetic pulse. And
yeah.
that's one of the ways that you would combat that. In fact, I did a project for a client who had a multi-story bomb shelter areas, 4 stories deep. It's really an incredible building. And the bottom level, all the walls were made out of steel. And he had a vehicle elevator that he could drive in and go down and park it so that he could have the only functioning vehicle in the apocalypse. So, yeah, the Faraday cage is a real thing, and it does impact cell phone communications as well. It's a little bit less common for us to do that on the ceiling. And so if you don't do it on the
Right.
ceiling, you probably could have still just fine reception on your cell phone. But that is a concern. You might need to have a repeater or use Wi-Fi to have good cell phone communications, or just use a landline that's fed into that room.
Right. Yeah, of course. Now, what about HVAC? If I was a bad guy and I knew there was a panic room somewhere in the house, rather than trying to take a bazooka to it and see if I could blow it down, I'd go to the central air conditioning system and try to get some kind of gas into it to, just basically gas the house and take everybody out that way. I assume you guys have thought of that.
Yeah, we have. However, I
Yeah.
will tell you that type of attack is exceedingly rare. Usually, your burglars are not coming in with chemical weapons to try to flush you out. Now,
Right.
that's not to say we haven't come across that issue before. We have. And with every custom project, we always sit down and we talk about the kinds of threats that they are most concerned about. And if that's a threat that they're concerned about, then we plan accordingly with the HVAC system and their filtration systems. And we make sure that the doors have seals that seal tightly and things like that. But the very vast majority, 99.9%, we're talking about burglars. We're talking about
No. Okay.
people that are coming into the house, and we need to be able to keep those people at bay and preferably make it so that they don't know that the secret room even exists. And so we're really just focusing on number one, camouflage, and number two, forced entry protection. That's the locking.
Okay. Now, have you ever gone to some, like, I'm imagining the panic room for somebody who's the king of something or the princess of something. Have you ever gone to some really truly exotic places, Tajikistan, or I'm pulling something, somewhere in far eastern Russia?
Yeah.
Have you ever done that kind of work in some of those sorts of really exotic locations?
Yes,
Okay.
many times.
Are you
Yeah.
allowed to
So,
share any of that just for fun or?
well, obviously, I cannot share names, but I will
Okay.
tell you that our secret drawers are found in royal palaces. You mentioned the Middle East. We have
Yeah.
customers in the Middle East that are very high profile customers,
Yeah.
heads of state of different countries.
Yeah.
We've worked for oligarchs and a lot of people that I can't really talk about.
Yep.
However, I do want to emphasize that the majority of our clientele are not in those categories. The majority of our clientele are usually domestic. We're probably 80 to 90% within North America.
Okay.
And Most of them are not particularly famous. Most of them are on the custom side, they are typically successful because those tend to be more elaborate houses, more expensive projects. But a lot of them are CEOs of companies. That's like the number one demographic, probably, is
Right.
they're heads of corporations. A lot of times they run companies that you would have heard of, and those
Mhm.
companies have a whole executive protection department where their job is to protect the CEOs, and the CEOs are often big targets. And so a lot of times our direct customer is the consulting firm that those companies have hired to protect their CEOs.
Gotcha. Manage the connection between building occupants and the outside world using Solera translucent glass. Learn more at advancedglazings.com. Well, let's change gears a little bit and talk about the architectural side of it. I mean, they need to blend into all, the rest of the architecture, the interior design within the space, within the home. Let's talk about the aesthetic side of it. I mean, it's obvious that it needs to be hidden for safety purposes or to distract the burglars. But what about making sure that the place is architecturally consistent and is beautiful? I mean, these people are wealthy. They want things to be beautiful. How do you handle the aesthetic, the beauty side of it?
Yeah, that's a great question, too. So, in the early stages of a project, we ask the client to send us either photographs of the space where the secret door is going to go, or renderings, or at least drawings that show the space. And a lot of times they want to give us like really zoomed in images, and that's not what we're interested in. We want a really zoomed out perspective so that we can get a sense of what the decor is and what the
Yeah.
style of the house is and what the layout is, right? And so they don't often know exactly what the camouflage style needs to be, but we have done this so many times, we know what the possibilities are. And so we'll look at their space and we'll say, okay, there are three really great camouflage methods that will work in this location. Like if the secret room is off of the game room, then we're thinking about concealing it as a pool cue rack, or something that goes on the wall in the game room. If the secret room is in the library, then it's probably going to end up
It's a
being a bookcase.
bookshelf.
And if it's in the kitchen, it might be a curio cabinet or something like that. So it depends on where in the house the secret door is going to go. We look at that and we say, okay, what would look natural in that space? And we present options and we find out what the client is the most excited about. And then we create a computer model. And this is really an indispensable tool in our industry. We will create a computer model, not just of the secret door, but even before the secret door, of that part of the house. So we'll show the opening, the adjacent walls, the ceiling, and then we will design a secret door that looks natural in that space. And so that way we can verify that the clearances are all appropriate. It's wide enough for them to pass through, verify that the scale and the perspective is right, verify that the symmetry and that it's cohesive with the rest of the room and the other features. Oftentimes we're blending in with carpentry that we didn't necessarily provide because it goes throughout the rest of the house. And so we have to make sure there's so many details to make sure that all the panels are exactly the same symmetry and they all have the exact same joinery style. Because if you're standing right in front of the secret door, if anything at all is off, then that's a tell. That gives away the secret room. So there's really a ton of attention to detail that is required. And then we create these drawing packages for the client that show 3D images of what their secret door is going to look like, both in the open position and the closed position. And the drawings will call out all the options and features that they have selected, and it will give them an opportunity to visualize what it is that they are buying from us and verify that it is exactly what they were hoping for. And sometimes, the clients aren't professionals at visualizing things. And so sometimes they see it for the first time in that really comprehensive drawing package and they say, oh, I didn't know it was going to be like that. I thought it was going to be, taller or something. And so That's fine. That's great. That's why we do it. So we'll go back and we'll redesign it. We don't charge them anything for that. We want to make sure that they're absolutely in love with the design. And then once they have signed off on it, well, that's when we actually start fabricating it. We build it up at our factory, and we actually pre-install every secret door into a special jig that we have that imitates the opening at the house. So we can install it, we can make sure that it fits the opening for which it was designed. And then very importantly, we will cycle test it. So we'll open and close it hundreds of times, sometimes thousands of times, and verify that there's no signs of wear, that it doesn't squeak or squeal, that it doesn't feel rickety, and that it's smooth operating. And then we'll photograph it and send those images to the client so that they can feel comfortable that, you know, when it's time to pay for it, that the product has been built and it's exactly what they envisioned, and they're excited to get it. And then we pack it up in a big crate and we send it out to wherever in the world it's going to be installed.
So do you have some interior designers on staff to help with that, or it's just skills that you guys have?
So no, not really. We have done it so many times, myself and the other people that design secret doors that work for us, that we really have kind of an eye for this. And actually, a lot of times we're working with designers, like the clients, especially on the high-end projects, the clients have their own designers. And so we don't really want to step on their toes, and they're being paid to design the project. And it's our job to really make their imagination come to reality. That being said, there is some cooperation there because sometimes they design something irrespective of its ability to actually be manufactured. And so a lot of times they'll come to us with a design and we'll be like, you know, you have made some design choices that will negatively impact the quality of the camouflage. And so let's talk about those. Is it possible that we can, you know, change this trim width and increase the, you know, the baseboard height or something? You know, we'll go through and see if we can massage the design so that we can deliver the very best product possible to the customer.
Right on. Okay. Now, one last thing on this, in this vein, fade, paint fade, wood fade, the stuff that's there, it's been there for a while. So even if you match the wood and the paint, it's not going to be the same because, you know, the existing materials have been exposed to UV, so they're going to change a little bit. Do you have to adjust for that? And if so, how do you do it?
Yeah, well, so in the majority of the projects, like maybe 60 or 70%, that's not an issue because these are new builds. And so everything is new. But we do a lot of retrofits as well. And what you're saying is absolutely a concern when it is an existing structure. And not just paint fade. I mean, that is one little subset of it, but really just matching everything that's there, whether it's faded or not, is really a delicate art as well as a science. And so, for example, doing a finish, like a lot of times people will they'll try to send us they'll email me a photograph and they'll be like, this is my color. And it's like, you can't match to a photo. I mean, it's totally dependent upon the lighting conditions and the computer monitor settings. So we will have them send us a physical sample. They'll remove a cabinet door or chip someplace and they'll send it to us. And if we have that physical sample, we have very experienced finishers that will play with the finish all day long, adding in a couple of drops of this color and that color so that we can produce an exact match. And we have never really had a problem with that. We can match whatever furniture or whatever other color or finish you have in the house.
Chips, scratches, like do you age it like in a like for a retrofit? Do you like try to age the wood, fake that it's aged so that it matches the chips and scratches and just, you know?
Yeah, so
I'm just curious.
Sometimes we deliver product that has been distressed intentionally, but it's usually to match the distressed carpentry that they already have. If a client's look is old world, then the carpenters of both our product and also the rest of the carpentry in the house, they'll go in and they'll like mark it up and they'll beat it with a hammer and stuff to make it look like it's old. And it actually is a challenge to try to match. That's one of many subtle nuances that we have to precisely match. Now, when it comes to like ordinary wear and tear, like if the house is like 15 years old and there's some scratches, I've never been asked to intentionally put scratches on my stuff. I think it's easier for
Right.
them to repair what they've done already and have a new looking product.
Gotcha. All right. That's cool. All right. We're getting near the end. There's a question, Steve, that I ask every single guest at the end of the show. And I'm going to do it with you too. And I ask you to answer it from whatever perspective you'd like. No pressure on any particular perspective. And that question is, what makes a great building?
What makes a great building?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So I think that a great building is just when you see it, it's just proportioned right. There's something about just like, the golden proportion, as you know, as an engineer, we study that kind of stuff, the geometry. And also as an engineer, I'm huge into just geometry. It's a huge part of my job. And when I see a house that the designer has just got the geometry just right, it just almost sings to the eye, like it just feels good to look at it. And I'd say that's, for me, that is the key to having a building. And then, the stuff that I do is, I guess it's important too, but what I do is by definition, it's secret. It's behind the scenes. So you don't really notice that, and hopefully never, unless you're the homeowner. Anyway, that's my answer.
That was fantastic. That was a great answer. Before we go, do you have any announcements, any exciting news, anything you want to promote, Steve?
Oh, yeah, great. Yeah. So just, I would say, go to our website if you're interested in security or secret doors. If you consider yourself a high-end client or you need something really custom and special, go to hiddenpassageway.com. And if you're trying to work within a budget, go to hiddendoorstore.com, and you'll have fewer options there, but the same great quality and same great camouflage. Check out those places and give us a call. We would love to be able to help you out with a project.
Hiddenpassageway.com, hiddendoorstore.com.
That's right.
All
Yeah,
right.
both lead straight to us.
Perfect. Steve, this was a lot of fun, like a whole lot of fun. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time.
You bet. Thanks for having me. It was great. Take care.
All right. You too. Take care.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Better Buildings for Humans. For more information on the world's best light diffusing and highly insulating glass glazing, please visit advancedglazings.com.